Hi, this is Usha. Welcome to Rathod's IAS classes. Today in this lecture, we are going to see current affairs of 9th February 2021. In this lecture, we are going to discuss 8 topics which are very much relevant to UPSC. So before getting started, I want to make a small announcement on this platform. We came up with this current affairs package course. In this current affairs package course, we are focusing exclusively on current affairs and also mains answer writing practice. So if you ask me what is importance of current affairs, about 50 to 60% of questions, either it may be prelims or mains and even interview, you can expect questions from current affairs. So if you are getting any static questions, so they are also based on these current affairs. So to clear this UPSC, you need to master current affairs. And next one is, if you are talking about this answer writing practice, without proper answer writing skills, you cannot clear UPSC for sure. So when you started your preparation on day 1 onwards, you need to focus on this mains answer writing practice. And if you are enrolling to this course, we are also providing you prelims practice questions along with video solutions. So in this way, you can master current affairs, you can improve your answer writing skills, and you will be also practicing prelims questions. So in this way, what is demand of this UPSC, exactly we are focusing on that. So please try to join this course as soon as possible and try to achieve your aim of clearing UPSC. For further details of this course, please contact us. Details are given in description box. Now let us see first article. Title says no glacial lake found, landslip likely trigger according to experts. So in yesterday's lecture, we studied about what caused this Uttarakhand flash floods. In yesterday's lecture, we discussed about this glacial outburst that led to this flash floods in this Uttarakhand. But now, expert mainly says that there is no glacial lake that found. So this flash flood that might happen because of landslip. So now let us try to understand this article in great detail. And if you see this image, please cut this image and keep in your book. So it will be very important to see what happened in which area. Okay, so this map, which is mainly satellite image, showing that where this disaster exactly happened. And if you see here, context, it mainly says that the cause of this Chamoli Delok, it is mainly due to landslip but not because of glacial lake outburst. So it is according to satellite images. So even Central Water Commission mainly responsible for monitoring, and also it will prepare monthly reports based on the state of glacial lakes and water bodies mainly through satellite images. So even CWC also said that there is no evidence of glacial lake that found in this area. So this event mainly happened because of landslip. Okay. So this is some important thing which mainly you have to remember regarding this. And now let us see next article. Title says Sri Lanka clears Chinese energy project 50 kilometers off Tamil Nadu. So this article mainly focusing on 3 important places, okay, that is very near to Park Bay. So this article mainly focusing on Chinese energy projects that is very near to our Indian coast, that is just 50 kilometers off from Tamil Nadu. So now let us try to understand this article in great detail. So this article will be important regarding geography, which comes under GS 1, and also it is important regarding international relations, which comes under GS paper 2. So regarding geography, we need to refer where is this islands are located, and you have to see from north to south or south to north. And next, regarding international relations, we need to see what are issues of India regarding these Chinese energy projects. Okay, and if you see context, it mainly says that recently Sri Lanka took decision that it will pull off of this East Container Terminal of Colombo Port that deal with India and Japan. So in 2019, agreement made between Japan, India and Sri Lanka regarding development of this East Container Terminal, which is located in Colombo Port. But what happened recently, 3-4 days ago, we discussed about article like Sri Lanka, which is pulling out of this agreement. Mainly there are some issues regarding port unions or trade unions in that port area. They are not allowing foreigners to develop that port. So because of this, Sri Lanka mainly pulled off from this agreement here. So a week before this agreement or this Colombo Port Terminal agreement here, then what happened? Sri Lanka also cleared Chinese energy project in 3 islands. They are present near this Jaffna Peninsula. So you have to refer your atlas for this, where is this 3 exact islands are located. So if you see, this is Sri Lanka. Here we have Jaffna Islands. Okay, so Jaffna Peninsula. So this is Jaffna Peninsula that is present, and near this Jaffna Peninsula we have 3 islands like this. So first island here is Analitivu. Okay, Laitivu. First one is Analitivu, and second one is Nainativu, and third one here is Delphs, or we can say Nendutivu. Okay, so these are 3 islands which are present near this Jaffna Peninsula. So in these 3 islands, China which is going to develop some projects, energy projects here. Okay, so these are very near to our Park Bay. So as we know, this Park Bay here present between India and Sri Lanka here. So near this Park Bay, these 3 islands are located, and these are very near to our Tamil Nadu coast. It is just 50 kilometers. Okay. So in this context, Chinese energy projects mainly focusing on installing of hybrid renewable energy system, mainly in these 3 islands. So you have to remember these 3 island names and as well as location. Nainitivu, Dwelt Island and Analitivu. Okay. So these are mainly located very near to this Park Bay, and they are connected to this Jaffna Peninsula. So if you see context of India, what are the contents? So first one is they are mainly very near to Indian coast, correct? And mainly these project sites are very near to Indian coastline. So because of this, it is mainly important for Indian security. So if you are talking about India here, we have China in this area. So with China, we have boundary issues regarding eastern sector, middle sector and also western sector. And if you are talking about Pakistan, so Pakistan, it is close friend of China and they are all weather friends. So what happened in Pak occupied Kashmir, it is coming up with China-Pakistan economic corridor, correct? So whenever China-Pakistan economic corridor that is passing through this Pak occupied Kashmir, Pakistan, and it is connecting this Gwadar port. So whenever infrastructure projects are laying by this China, so China can keep its troops here mainly to contain this boundary also. And here in Sri Lanka, it came up with Hambantota port here. So it come up with development of this Hambantota port in this Sri Lanka, and now it is also coming near to India. Mainly it is coming up with some energy projects here. So because of this, we can say Chinese control around India is increasing. So it is very important concern regarding India, regarding security here. Okay. So if you are talking about even Myanmar, in Myanmar also Chinese influence is increasing. It is coming up with China-Myanmar economic corridor. So in this way, China is surrounding around India here, and it want to rise as a power in this Asian region, and not only that but also across world. So these are some issues regarding this project. Now let us see next article. Title says US to rejoin UN Human Rights Forum. So this article mainly for talking about one international organization, that is United Nations Human Rights Council. So this article will be important regarding international relations, which comes under GS paper 2. So if you see background regarding this article, US under Trump administration that left this United Nations Human Rights Council. Now we saw there is new administration that started in America, and this new administration mainly want to rejoin this United Nations Human Rights Council again. So now let us try to understand this article in great detail. So context says that US announced plans to re-engage, that is to join this United Nations Human Rights Council. If you see background of this article, Trump administration withdraw from this organization 3 years ago here, and again now new administration want to rejoin this United Nations Human Rights Council. So in this context, you can expect questions regarding this United Nations Human Rights Council in your prelims. So now let us try to understand some facts regarding this United Nations Human Rights Council. So this United Nations Human Rights Council, it was reconstitution mainly from its predecessor organization. So earlier this organization was United Nations Commission on Human Rights, and it renamed as United Nations Human Rights Council. and headquarters of this organization mainly located in Geneva in Switzerland. So if you're talking about composition of this United Nations Human Rights Council, there are about 47 members, and each elected member, they serves as a term for 3 years. If you see functions of this organization, the first one is it passes non-binding resolutions on human rights issues mainly through a periodic review of all 193 United Nations member states. So this is called as Universal Periodic Review. And this organization also oversees expert investigation of violations of specific countries. If at all any country which is going against this human rights, then it will be also conduct some investigation in that. And if you see regarding challenges and what is need for reforms in this organization, the first and foremost challenge which is facing by this United Nations Human Rights Council is this human rights record. The member states, for example Saudi Arabia, China and Russia, they are not following according to lines of aims and objectives of this Human Rights Council here. So that is leading to some criticisms in this organization. And there is also continued participation of several Western countries in UNHRC, and they continue to harbor misgivings on this understanding of human rights. So this is also one important challenge. And other challenges like non-compliance according to aims and objectives, and as well as there is non-partisanship of powerful nations. For example, US withdrawn from this. So because of all this, we need some reforms in this United Nations Human Rights Council. So these are some important facts that we should remember. And now let us see next article. So this article appeared in page number 7. So title says that improving Covishield efficacy or efficiency. So we need to talk about this Covishield efficiency, and we need to remember 2 to 3 important points which are highlighted in this. So if you see background of this Covishield vaccination. So in India, we started vaccination drive of this COVID-19 from January 16th onwards. So in this COVID-19 vaccination drive, we are mainly using 2 vaccines. First one is Covishield, second one is Covaxin. So if you are talking about this Covishield and Covaxin, they got emergency use authorization mainly from Drug Controller General of India, and they gave emergency use authorization based on one condition. Condition here is we need to record, or we need to take on account of this adverse reaction following immunization. That means after immunization, any person who is facing any adverse event or adverse reaction, then that to be recorded. So it is called as AEFI, that is adverse reactions following immunization. So if you are talking about especially Covishield, so recording of these adverse events, that is responsibility of Government of India. So because Government of India mainly gave authorization, that is emergency use authorization, mainly for restricted use regarding this Covishield. And if you are talking about efficacy of this Covishield, vaccine is given mainly in 2 doses. So if you are talking about Covaxin or Covishield, it will be given in 2 doses. So whenever we are giving first dose and we are leaving some gap, and later on we are giving second dose of this vaccine. So whenever in this time gap, what happened, we can develop antibodies against that. So this time gap will be, that can be maximum of 6 months. So within this 6 months of time, we should give second dose of this vaccine after administration of first dose here. So this article mainly saying that efficacy of vaccine of second dose within 4 to 6 weeks, efficacy that is seen 54.9%, and second dose after 12 weeks, then it showed efficacy of 82.4%. So that means whenever we are giving some gap between first dose and second dose, so based on this gap we can find out efficacy, and whenever we are increasing time gap between this first dose and second dose of maximum 6 months, then efficacy will be increased. So this is according to this study. And this article also highlighted that at present this COVID-19 vaccination rollout that happened, and we provided vaccines to medical officers, or we can say healthcare workers, and we provided about 47% of these registered healthcare workers, they are vaccinated till February 3rd, 2021. So now it is important step, mainly we need to go for registering of elderly people and also vulnerable people. So because there is high risk of serious diseases and also death because of this novel coronavirus, and especially elderly who are suffering with the other diseases or comorbidities. So now we need to go for phasing out or vaccine drive that should be conducted to this elderly and as well as vulnerable. So this is gist of this article. And now let us see next article. Title says a budget not for environment. So this is an excellent article. So when we are talking about economy and environment or development or environment in ethics especially, so we will come up with ethical dilemma, correct? Whether we need to go for development or whether we need to go for saving of our environment. So whenever we are moving towards development, then it will have some impact on environment. So whenever we are focusing on environment, it will not move towards development. So because of this, we will stuck in this ethical dilemma whenever we are talking about development and environment. So in this context, this article gave some insights regarding recently budget. Okay, recently our finance minister presented budget, right? So regarding that budget, so how much outlay that is given to so and so sector. So based on this article came up with some positives and as well as some negatives. So we are going to discuss them in very great detail. So if you see background here, our union budget. So government have not put in substantial new financial resources, especially for rapid growth for environment protection. So in this year budget which is presented by our finance minister, so in that budget there is no proper budgetary allocations mainly for growth of our environment protection. And second important thing mainly highlighted here is budgetary allocations for Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change, that has consistently fallen as percentage of total allocation. So if you are talking about total allocation, that is especially to this Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, that is less. And there are also increased allocation regarding environment in other fields like cleaning of river Ganga. So whenever we are going for cleaning of river Ganga, there are some hidden challenges like, so if at all so and so amount of money which is allocated to so and so department or so and so work, whether it will be used for that only efficiently or not. For example, we have some design flaws, we have some inefficiencies, we have corruption. So because of this, we need to look into whether the allocated money that is used for that purpose or not. Okay. And next one is several items which are mainly related to environment and taking inflation and its need in accordance, then allocations have remained stagnant or fallen. So whenever we are taking inflation into an account, there are number of environment related organizations or number of environment related departments are present. For example, we can say Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change. Next one is Wildlife Institute of India, Indian Council of Forestry Research and Education. For these organizations, then what happened, there is significant decrease or stagnant allocation that is given from this union budget to this ministry, mainly for containing or mainly for protection of our environment here, whenever we are taking inflation also into account. Okay. And if you're talking about substantial allocations, so we also see some positive environment impact. So we have some outlays for our wind and also solar energy. That means we are mainly pushing towards renewable energy. So whenever we are pushing towards renewable energy, we can decrease carbon dioxide emissions such that we can achieve our targets of Paris climate deal here. Okay. And next one is we also focusing on deep ocean mission. So this will helpful for conservation of the marine wildlife. And also we are focusing on urban drinking water. So in these areas we are giving some budgetary allocations. So this is some, we can see in this way some positive environment impact. And next one is continuation of highly centralized approach to all such schemes. So whenever we are going for different scheme for protection of environment, we are going for highly centralized approach. For example, if you are talking about Uttarakhand flash floods, so in Himalayas we need another approach. If you are talking about plains, we need other approach. If you are talking about coastal areas like Kerala, we are seeing flash floods or anything. So in that area we need separate approach here. So whenever any scheme which we are going through a centralized approach, it will not suits for all. So one size fits all approach should not be taken into account here. Okay. So we need to focus mainly on decentralized approach here. For example, when we are going for centralized approach like laying of costly infrastructure or expensive infrastructure for laying of big reservoirs or pipelines. For example, if there is any flood like condition that is seen, so in that area what we are doing, we are going for building of dams, and whenever we are seeing any floods, we are going for pipelines mainly to remove all those water. but we can go for localized approach or decentralized approach. For example, we can mix rural rooftops and as well as backyard harvesting. We can go for restoration of water, conservation of urban wetlands, generating of groundwater. So in this way, we can go for local approach rather than going for expensive infrastructure, and also we can go for decentralized approach rather than centralized approach. So whenever we are going for decentralized approach, it could achieve much better results whenever we are going for a centralized approach. And next one is we can go for responsible consumption, restraining luxury uses, and redistributing water more equitably. So these are some steps that can be taken mainly to protect our environment. So we need to go for responsible consumption. If at all there is no use of fan or lights, we should switch off that lights and fan, right? So if when we are filling bucket of water in our bathroom, then it will go on, right? So after filling of that bucket, water will spill over and they will go, right, wastely. So we should not do that. We should go for some responsible consumption. It is our responsibility to save our resources. So in this way, we need to bring changes in our mindset. Okay. And next one is, if you're talking about positives of this budget, first one is we also have some allocation for deep ocean. Okay. So for this deep ocean research, it is a program mainly for conservation of biodiversity, mainly in depth of our marine areas. So you may ask me, what is importance of conservation there in deep oceans? For example, in deep oceans, we have kelps forest are present. So how forests are present in land? So in that way, kelps forest also present in inside oceans. So that will be home for large mammals like whales. There are different wide varieties of biodiversity that is present here. So we need to also reserve those kelp forests. So in this way, this deep ocean allocation will be very, very useful. So that will increase our focus on these oceanic areas. And next one is we are focusing on public transport. We are also coming up with PPPs, and we are also moving towards metro lights in tier 1 and tier 2 cities, right? So whenever we are increasing this public transport, it will benefits people and also environment here. So how it will benefits environment? Because private vehicle consumption will be decreased, right? So whenever there is increase in the private vehicles that are moving on road, what happens? There will be also problems of traffic jams. So if you are talking about some details, if I am not wrong, about 10% of petroleum that is used in vehicles that is wasted because of waiting in this traffic jams. So whenever we are moving towards public vehicles or public transport system, whenever we are using metros, trams, etc., then what happened? There will be decrease in usage of these private vehicles, and we can use decreased consumption of this crude oil, such that can also finally decrease carbon dioxide emissions into atmosphere. So in this way, this can be very, very useful. And whenever we are using these metros also, it will also ensure last mile connectivity, safety, etc. And if you're talking about some contents regarding this budget, so this budget mainly proposes about 11,000 kilometers of national highway corridors. So whenever we are going for this national highway corridors, that will move towards Western Ghats or big forest areas or any important eco-sensitive areas. So whenever we are going for this national highway corridors, whenever we are going for electrification of these areas, then what happens? It will lead to habitat fragmentation, correct? So that will lead to fragmented fragile ecosystems, and that will lead to disrupted local community life. For example, in Himalayas. So in Himalayas, in this highly tectonic areas or tectonically active areas, whenever we are going for building of dams in these areas, whether these are sustainable? No, right? So because of this, we are seeing the flash flood like incidents that are happening in Uttarakhand, not only now but also in 2013. So regularly we are seeing these are earthquake prone areas, right? So whenever in these earthquake prone areas, we need to go for development that should be sustainable. So in this way, it will also create some damage economically also. Okay, so that will lead to disrupted local community life in northeastern India and Western Ghats. So in these areas, mainly tribal people, they will live. So it will also affect livelihood of these tribal people. So this is gist of this article. I hope it is clear. And now let us see next article. Title says Troubled Mountains. So this article mainly focusing on Uttarakhand flash floods. So in yesterday's lecture, we studied detailedly about what is this glacier burst, etc., right? So I think there is no need of explaining again that. If you have not watched yesterday's video, please go back and watch yesterday's video. And in first 15 to 20 minutes, we discussed about this Uttarakhand glacier in a very great detail. And it will be very easy also. And also you can remember easily some places which are in news. Okay. And now let us see this article in great detail. So if you are talking about background of this article, so there is staggering collapse of one important part of glacier in Uttarakhand's Nanda Devi mountain. So if we have a mountain here, so some part of this glacier that cut down and that fall here. So because of this landslip, or we can say avalanche here, that led to flooding. So mainly flooding seen in two important rivers, that is Rishiganga river and Dauliganga river. So because of these floods which happened in these two rivers, that led to claiming of many lives. And if you see some details here, recently revealed this satellite images, they showed that significant slice of glacier that dislodged by a landslide. So that led to roaring torrents in mainly Rishiganga river and also in Dauliganga rivers. That led to trapping of people who are working in these power projects which are present on these rivers. So in this way you have to remember about glacier lakes, glacier number, lakes number and also number of glaciers. So recent report we studied like there are number of glaciers are increasing day by day. So how glaciers will increase? So if we have size of this glacier like this, so because of melting from top or anything, what happened, there is dividing of these glaciers into two glaciers that is happening. So whenever we see number of glaciers number is increasing, it is not a good thing here. So because of increase in global warming or increase in climate change or increase in temperature, that is leading to the melting of these glaciers here. So because of this glacier lakes number is increasing and glaciers are increasing here. So this is not a good thing actually. So if you are talking about especially Himalayan region, so this Himalayan region mainly red flags that have been raised repeatedly. In 1991, we saw moderate earthquake that happened mainly in this Tehri Dam, where this Tehri Dam was built. Near this Tehri Dam, in 1991, moderate earthquake was recorded. And in 2013 floods that led to devastation of this Kedarnath. And 2013 floods are mainly happened because of torrential rains or cloud burst here. So because of all these events, we can point out threat in these areas like seismicity, that is active areas. These are active tectonic. In this area we see tectonic plates are very active. And next one is dam induced microseismicity, because of construction of dams that will also lead to earthquakes. And next one is landslides and floods. So these are some threats which are mainly seen in this Himalayan areas. And what might be causes? The first one is unsustainable glacier lakes, and next one is because of climate change that is leading to increased conversion of ice into water, or we can say melting of ice. And now let us talk about dam development. What is issue of dam development here? So if you are talking about some data, it mainly says that India is heavily invested in dam development, and this dam development which is majorly seen in these Himalayan regions. So why only Himalayan regions? And if you see in peninsular India, we are also having some rivers which are flowing in this direction, right, from west to east. But on this also we have some dams, but we are mainly focusing on dam construction on this Himalayan rivers because they are perennial rivers, correct? So because of they are perennial rivers, so whenever water is moving in that, whenever we are constructing dam here, so we can produce hydroelectricity. So because of this, we are mainly focusing on these Himalayan rivers. And if you are talking about this national plan to construct these dams on these 28 river valleys in hills, they realized in this few decades. And if you see in this Indian Himalayas, we have one dam for every 32 kilometers. So because of this, it is one of world's highest density of dams in India. Okay. And next, if you are talking about impact of these dams, so that will lead to potential earthquakes, and it is also leads to some monsoonal aberrations that will have some impact like Kedarnath floods, and there will be severe biodiversity loss. So whenever we are building any dam here, as we know in this freshwater or in rivers, what happen, there will be presence of some dolphins, some wild variety of biodiversity that is present. So whenever we are building dam and we are stopping movement of this river, then what happened, sometimes these dolphins may stuck in this in these dams, or they cannot move here and there. So because of this, that will also lead to to extinction of those animals or some biodiversity loss. And next one is they will also pose some extreme danger to communities which are present downstream. Whenever this type of floods happen, whenever this dam has been damaged, then what happens, that will lead to sudden flash floods that will be very, very harmful to areas which are present in downstream. And next important one is we also studied about aging dams. So we also have given one mains question regarding this aging of dams. So one important problem regarding this dams here is whenever river it is flowing in this way, it have capacity to bring sediments with that, okay, sediments, some silt, some dust particles, etc. So that will be sedimented here, right? So because of this, what happened, we can see high siltation of these dams. So whenever there is high siltation, carrying capacity of this dam will be reduced. For example, if you are talking about this Bhakra dam here, which is located in Himachal Pradesh, so siltation is about 140%. So because of this, we can see there is decrease in capacity of this dam which is carrying this water will be happen. Then what happen, it will also leads to floods, everything, okay. So we already discussed about that aging dams detailedly, I think 10 days before. So this is just of this article. I hope it is clear. Now let us see next article. Title says first steps in the journey to universal health care. So this article also talking about budget, okay, budgetary allocation regarding this universal health care. So we already discussed everything in detail in our budget highlights. So if you have not watched that video, please watch that video, and if you want, I will give you link of that union budget in this description box. Okay, so that will be very, very important because you can expect at least 2 to 3 questions in prelims from that budget speech. Now let us try to understand this article in great detail. So this article will be important regarding GS2 under health. So if you are talking about background here, Union Budget 2021-2022, it mainly saw some increase in our budgetary allocation regarding this healthcare. Because of this COVID-19 pandemic, we understand importance of healthcare. So 10.2% of increase in this budget estimates regarding this healthcare that is seen. So also in our budget, we are coming up with new scheme, that is Pradhan Mantri Atmanirbhar Swasth Bharat Yojana. So this will be very helpful for strengthening of our healthcare institutions. And also Finance Commission also gave some grant regarding states for development of healthcare in states. So also we came up with this Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. So we are going for extension of this scheme. So this scheme mainly provides some insurance of about rupees 5 lakhs per year. Okay. And also if you are talking about some data regarding this National Sample Survey NSS, so it also says that we need persistent and as well as large dispensaries between coverage figure and as well as survey figure. So these are some important details which are given in this article. And regarding this healthcare, we studied detailedly in our in our union budget. Okay, so that is under principle 1 or pillar 1. And now let us see next article. So this is very, very good article actually. So title says that the long and the short of India's Nepathu dilemma. So this article mainly talking about India's dilemma regarding Myanmar. So this article will be important regarding international relations, which comes under GS paper 2. So I will try my level best to make you understand this topic. So if you are talking about India and Myanmar, recently in Myanmar military coup that happened, and now control it is under military. So if you are talking about future of Myanmar, it is uncertain. We don't know what will happen in future. If you are talking about location of this Myanmar, it is mainly sandwiched between two powerful states. Okay, these two powerful states, they are competing for power and influence in this region. So those two states include India and China here. So if you are talking about this location of this Myanmar, it is mainly certain to be a key piece in regional politics. So because it is located between these two powers, that is China on one side and India on one side, so it has some impact on this regional politics of this Myanmar also. If you are talking about India, India mainly follows non-interference. It will not interfere in other foreign or other internal affairs of other countries here. So if you are talking about Myanmar, why Myanmar is important? Because we have NSC and Kaplan group that is present, and this is active, and this started attacking our Indian soldiers. So in return, our military also had military action against these peoples by India. So why this type of military actions are done by India? Because we have some good relationship with Myanmar. So because of this, mainly to counter this NSC and Kaplan group, we had some military action by India in this Myanmar region. But if you're talking about strong relations or strong reactions and threat of sanctions, so if you're talking about at present Myanmar, it is also facing threat of sanctions mainly from West, that is US and Western countries here. So because of this, it is also have some unique political realignments in Myanmar. So this is also one of important concern regarding this military coup. So this is also one cause that led to military coup in Myanmar. And next one is if you're talking about democratic credentials of former state council, that is Aung San Suu Kyi, mainly deeply diminished today because of this reason. And if you see, coup mainly stands to hurt interest of India and as well as China, even international community. So because of this military coup, that what happened, that affects relations of this Myanmar with other countries. So in this way, this coup also hurt some interactions with India and China, not only India and China but also even international community here. So if you are talking about India's concerns here, and if you're talking about Chinese advantage regarding this military coup here is across boundary of Myanmar and China, that is across this Yon province. What happened in this area? There are about 26 insurgent separatist groups that are active here, and they are mainly located in this Yon province, which is boundary between China and Myanmar here, and they started attacking Myanmar and also even northeastern states of India. So these insurgent groups, they are mainly supported by China, for example, for financing, for arms and ammunition, for residents, etc. For all this, China which is supporting this 26 separatist group, and they are active in this Yon province and mainly attacks this northeastern states here. And if you're talking about China and Myanmar relations, China and Myanmar have good relations, and China is also coming up with China-Myanmar economic corridor in Myanmar. So because of this, whenever any political issue that comes to the international organization or international level, China which is mainly backing up this Myanmar. Okay, so if you're talking this, we can also say there is China's presence is increasing in Myanmar. So because of this, India which is coming up with mainly 3 important projects in this Myanmar. So these projects are mainly delayed whenever we are going or we are keeping any issue in international thing. Okay, so because of increase in presence in China, it will also prevent India to reach East Asia or Southeast Asia or even ASEAN here. So if you are talking about Southeast Asia, India also not part of RCEP now. India came out of this RCEP in November 2019. So because of this, Myanmar mainly acts as a gateway to reach the Southeast Asia or Asian countries. Now whenever there is increase in Chinese presence in this, it will also affect India's relation with this Asian countries also. So if you are talking about Beijing, that is China mainly giving political and as well as diplomatic support in regional level and also at global level. So because of this support which is given by Beijing to Myanmar here, so it is mainly forcing Myanmar military to get closer to China. So it is one cause of concern for India. And if you are talking about India's dilemmas, the first one is we need to whether support to this military or we need to support this civilian government. So this is first important dilemma here. So whenever we want to counter China, we need to support anyone, right? So if you are talking about this military, in India's national interest, India would find it is very, very difficult to openly support this military here. Because already Western countries like USA and other Western countries, they impose sanctions on Myanmar. So how can we support this military now openly? So we cannot go for supporting of military here. So even our Ministry of External Affairs came up with statement. So in that statement, our minister mainly said that we believe that the rule of law and democratic process must be upheld. That means we need to go for only democratic processes. So we will favor only in restoring democracy here. So in this way, what happened whenever we are supporting the civilian government, military of Myanmar which is getting very, very closer to China. So if you're talking about why we need Myanmar. So if you're talking about importance of Myanmar, mainly to contain northeastern insurgent groups which are present in this along India and Myanmar border, we need cooperation and also coordination action with this Myanmar, and also we need some intelligence sharing between these two forces regarding information of these insurgent groups also. So unless military decides to engage in peace process to gain, then Rohingya's question is also likely to be pushed aside. Finally, author mainly conclude that this military, that is Myanmar military, that need to be decided, may need to engage in this peace process or not. So if at all it is not coming up with any peace process, so it will also lead this question of Rohingyas, that is pushed aside. So what is relationship between this Myanmar's military and Rohingyas? This Myanmar military it is only important reason for this Rohingyas migration, right? Rohingyas issue here. So because of this, whenever we want to come up with solution to this Rohingyas, who are mainly staying in India and Bangladesh now. So if you want to come up with the solutions for this Rohingya question, so this military that need to go for peace process. So this is gist of this article. I hope it is clear. Now let us see main question. So what are the India's dilemmas in Myanmar? Suggest steps to resolve these dilemmas. So try to write answer. Answer should not be more than 200 words. So by this we are concluding today. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. Please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to like, share and comment my videos. And don't forget to join this current affairs package course. Thank you so much.